Okay, so this is going to be relatively short compared to my other like hour and a half long epics. I'm not going to be going into too much detail about the way that pores and wrinkles form in the direction because we're going to go over that in class, and I might do a bit of a longer video on that as a separate thing. What I'm going to do in this video is start talking about some of the more technical parts of ZBrush. One being how we can actually change the way that brushes work to achieve our desired results. We already kind of know with the clay buildup, if we turn our focal shift down, up, you get rid of the tooth. It becomes very soft and quite rubbish. But there's also other stuff we can do. There's quite a bit of Photoshop style changes we can do in this. And then introduce you to a couple of other things, layers and the morph brush, which can help with this kind of stuff. It is getting a bit on more on the technical side, but if you just stick to the steps and stuff, it will be quite easy to do. So try not to get overwhelmed with how technical this may appear. But I mean, and I will also say that though we are going to be looking at skin pores and wrinkles, at this kind of level of detail is only something that I would do if I'm doing a full project with a whole range of steps. This is only something I do after I've done retopology and UVing and stuff, because I'm bringing it back into ZBrush to get the detailing on there. Though I might do this on some kind of sculpt, especially if it's just kind of like a concept sculpt. I'm not really worried about retopology, whatever. I might just do this on a Dynamo sculpt, but it has to be very dense. This one is 4.4 million points of information. It's very, very dense. I've put it way up there, and obviously the process, I would have got rid of all the off shapes, all the sculpting information. This is again the stage where what we're looking at here is a perfectly smooth face, and we're adding age to it now. So, move my keyboard. First of all, how can we change stuff to work for us? Well, very, very easy. It's as simple as we just get a brush we like, and then we start changing some of these effects. So stroke, for instance. On a clay build-up, this is stroke, we get this. But then if we start changing stuff, drag rec, then we actually drag out the alpha, which means if I change this alpha to something like alpha 5, I can start to drag out kind of these kind of shapes. So I'm able to do certain things. Color spray and spray are both very, very cool. I like these a lot. So if I lower my Z intensity, there we go. So spray literally sprays, and we can actually change the scatter of that through some options. Again, spray is pretty much the same. Drag dot is basically dragging, depending on your brush size and your brush intensity, you're dragging around the alpha on the surface to then place it on somewhere. So I can be like, bang, it's going to be there. And then you got this new one, drag stamp, which I guess is quite cool. I've not really used it that much, but you can drag out, and the further you move away from it, the more intensified it is. Cool. And then the alpha there, we've got alphas. Now you can make your own alphas, and inside the lightbox there are alphas. There you go. There's a few alphas to play with, but again, you can make your own. It's just a black and white image, and as long as it's a PSD or a PNG, it doesn't matter. So what I'm going to do at first is show you how I can make a simple skin pores brush. It's not going to be realistic. If this was going to be done on some sort of film and you're doing a close-up of the character, it's definitely going to be defeated. You're definitely going to see what's wrong with it. But if this is just kind of like a game character, or we're just sketching about and whatever, it's perfectly fine. And this is what I use for everything. I don't really have many. I don't think I've ever bought brushes, to be honest. I've downloaded some free ones for specific things, but really I tend to use a lot of my own. So, skin pores. What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to just go grab my damn standard brush, first of all. I'm going to turn it to color spray or spray. I just generally turn it to color spray because. And then my alpha. I'm going to turn this alpha to, where have you gone? Alpha 40 right there. So I'm turning it from whatever alpha this is to alpha 40. And I can see kind of what happens. So hopefully you'll be able to see already how I'm going to do this. And all I'm going to do is just do a bit of a test patch until I'm happy. There we go. So I'm quite happy with that. And what I'm going to do is just make sure I turn on remember dynamic and remember size. So up here. So when I come back to this brush, it should remember the actual size of my brush. Which is going to be very important. And also just make sure I've got this dynamic and the draw size. Make sure I've got that ticked so it's highlighted. And that's just because it maintains the size in draw space. So if I go really close up, you're going to see that the brush is really big. But if I zoom out, the brush kind of will stay the same size relative to the object, rather than relative to the screen. You know, told you it's going to get a little bit complex. Cool. So that's that. I've already got my skin pose brush. And you can kind of see why we need a very dense mesh as well. You can see that around the cheeks here, it gets a little bit pixelated, but it's all good. So bad. So we can do all that kind of jazz. That's how I'm going to set up a simple pause brush, and I could probably make a new alpha to give me a better result, but really that's all we need for this. Now what I'm going to do is show you the morph brush. Now we can't erase anything. You could think that the smooth brush as an eraser if you wanted to, but that doesn't do a great job. It often takes away too much information. It alters the shape, all that kind of jazz. What I'm going to do is start using a brush called the morph brush. I think it's G. BMG, yeah. So that's behind my head. So I'll move my head out of the way. Whoop. There we go. So the morph brush right there. BMG. Morph brush. Now if you just click on the surface, it's going to give you this message. Brush requires a valid morph target. And what a morph target is basically we're going to take a picture of this, like a bit of a memory snap, a history snap. And how we do that is very, very simply. Is on our right hand side menu here with the morph brush selected. I'm going to come down and we're going to find something called the morph target. Morph target right there. And inside morph target, it's a bunch of menus. It's not a particularly big menu, but the only thing that's highlighted to use in a minute is store MT, store morph target. And what that's going to do, like I said, it's going to take a picture of the mesh in its memory. So now it remembers the mesh. And then what I can do is if I go back to my brush there, I can start to brush on. Texture. And I'm going to texture in places I don't really want this to be. And I'm also going to make it a bit intense. It's surprising how rough a person's face is, because again we see everything through, you know, the way we're lit, skin porosity, subsurface scattering. We don't see the roughness of someone's skin unless they've got really, really, really rough skin. But if you do, there's been like scans of people's heads which can like measure micro surface detail and stuff, and people have got really bumpy faces. So this is probably fine for now. And also I'm, you know, making a point. So all good. Cool. Now what this morph target does, BMG, is it almost acts as like an eraser for me. It's now loaded with that stored morph target. And what I can do is actually come in and take away that information and return it to its original morph target. Now this is really, really nice, because if I make it nice and big but bring down the intensity quite a lot, what I can do is nudge stuff backwards, you know. And like almost like paint out in place. So I don't want around the eyes, so let me just paint that out, and then I can just paint it out a little bit, blend it in. Or maybe it's just a little bit too intense around there, so I can just slightly nudge it. And there's these parameters as well you can play with. So like morph, for instance, basically increases that information. It's basically like a global. I can either bring it back into the negatives, so it's actually starting to intensify that information, or I can start to bring it to the pluses, and it's starting to blend in that original morph target. And then these others, I don't really use these too often. I don't really know what these will do. Don't appear to be really anything. Maybe I've just not got the information to do stuff. Yeah, not really doing anything. Oh, that one's doing something apparently. So it's always good to have a play with stuff. Bring it back. Switch. Basically switches back and forth from the original morph target to the new target. Delete morph target and create difference mesh. Just make sure you don't click this. I think if I click it, obviously it starts to make a solid mesh, a different mesh from your morph target, I think. Again, don't really use it. I only use delete morph target or store morph target. And that's morph targets. That's BMG for morph target. And it'll come up with that annoying menu every time you click saying there's no morph target. All you have to do is come down. Make sure you do this before anything. This is the tricky thing with morph target is if I know that I'm going to be doing all this kind of detailing on here, I've got to make sure that I've got everything. I've got to make sure I've got this stored so that I can actually, have something to take it back to. If I don't store this information, I'm kind of stuck. And then deleting morph target will delete morph target. So if I'm like, okay, I'm cool, I'm gonna stick with this now. I'm gonna delete morph target. Now I've got my new standard. Now I'm gonna store morph target, which is gonna store this, and then I can come in here and maybe do, I don't know, a few spots. Maybe she's got a bit of acne, and I've got to kind of like put that information up there. Now this is on the new morph target, so if I go back into my morph target brush, I can start to push those back. But as you can see, it's not pushing back that information, it's only pushing back the information I've just put on. So morph target is really, really cool. I use it a lot. I actually like using it a lot. It's a nice fun little one. Now there is something else as well. I'll take us back to unblemished faces. There's another few things, two more things that can help us make skin. One of them is called noise, and obviously we've used noise in the past. We've used noise in Photoshop, we've used noise in Maya, in Painter, all that kind of stuff, and it's noise. But how we use it in here is actually really, really nice. It's not perfect, but I often use it at the very, very beginning of this kind of detailing phase. To give me that kind of base, and I'll actually use it I'll use this bit I'm going to show you now, and then I'll do the morph target thing, then I'll do layers, which I'm going to show you in a bit, jumping back and forth from these kind of different things. So noise, it lives over in the right hand side menu here, in when my eyes decide to see it. Surface, there you go, surface. So surface, noise, we click noise, you're going to get this menu, this window up. And I'm not going to change any settings of how the noise is being made. What I'm going to do is just zoom into this little window, and you'll be able to see that there's noise applied to this. You can see that there is something. There is noise being applied to this object, and you can already see it kind of looks like skin already. But all I can do now is just play with some of these. Oh, it's a bit sensitive, this window. There you go. I can play with some of these, and just you can see how this works. So maybe something like that. Maybe magnify it a little bit like that, and I can change the actual shape of the noise as well. So it changes the way the black and white kind of react to the surface, and all that kind of jazz. So I'm going to click OK. And then you can see on the face we've got that noise, but it's not actually there just yet. It's given us a preview. It's not actually there. It's Going to change the way it looks as well, because currently with my mesh being, well, at this point 3 million, 3.3 million, don't know why I've lost a million, 3.3 million. Even though that is a big number, when it comes into the world of sculpting and this kind of detailing, it's not actually a really big number. If I wanted to get like really, really crisp detail on something like this, I'd have to be in the 14 million, 15 million, 20 million. Because, like I said, this isn't actually there. This is still just a preview. And if I say apply to mesh, I click that. You might have seen that change. It's subtle, but if I go close, you might be able to see it more. Let's go here. So when I click apply to mesh, now the actual noise is being applied to the mesh. And because mine is, it's high res, but it's low res for this, some of that information becomes pixelated, essentially, because the actual polygons are in the way there. What you can also do, which I love doing, is you can mask out areas. So for instance, I don't want anything on the inside of the eyes, so I can just go in there and mask out the eyes. But what I'm going to do is bring the intensity of the RGB intensity of the mask down. There we go, and then I'm going to almost like airbrush it in. I'm going to do that even more. I'm going to write it right down. There you go. Because then I can kind of airbrush where I don't want the stuff to be. You can see there. Maybe around the nose. Oops, a daisy. And the nose, maybe. Wings of the nose. Maybe it's filtrum. Definitely the lips. I want to take off the lips there. But again, because I can blend it in, I can have a little bit of that noise going onto the lips, just not 100%. Maybe chin. Long story short, you can use the masking brush to actually take away some of the mask. Some of the noise. And this is before I've applied to mesh. So definitely want to take that out of the ears. Oh, you know, boom. Like that. You can be as subtle as dramatic as you want. I try and think like no, I'm not a makeup artist. I try and think like a makeup artist when I'm doing this kind of stuff. So I'm going to hit apply to mesh. It is now applied to mesh. Oh, you can actually clearly, well, at least on my screen, it might come through in the recording. When I click apply to mesh, you can see how it kind of softens out a little bit because we're losing that high resolution detail. But now, you can see that where I've masked off before, there is now no information. So this is what I might be doing. Sorry, I'm waiting for a parcel and I keep hearing stuff outside. So this is what I might be doing. This is like the stage one, the very, very first thing I do. And then I'll go in there with the morph target brush, so BMG. So I'll store that morph target. Then I'll start to build up a little bit more detail. You know. And then I'll just pull it back a little bit. So using that morph brush just to erase the information. So I wouldn't then go back and do another noise on top of this one. With the way that I do stuff anyway, I do the noise pass once, and then I do this kind of pass where I'm doing this kind of information. Another thing we can do, so that's morph target, that's the surface noise, lives in surface. We can also look at layers. The layers are great, but they've traditionally, for me, sometimes caused stuff to crash. This is just me though, abusing them a little bit. What layers are just like in Photoshop. We can actually have different layers and have different information on them, and you can perpetually go between them. So it is better in that respect than like morph brush or the noise, because those kind of commit to the detail straight away. These ones you can have like 5 different layers. Have one layer be scar tissue, one layer be spots, one layer be blare, and you'll see what happens. So I make a layer. So I click on this little box down here, and make a layer. So now I've got a layer, and if you can see there, it's untitled layer. I don't really bother naming them often, but then we've got rec. So it's actually recording what I'm doing now. So what I can do is come in here and start to I'll do something you can actually see. There we go. So we start to pull some information on. Okay, so pull that information on. And if I click rec, we're now in, it's just a layer on its own. And I can click the little round circle there. It might be hard to see in the recording, but when you see it in person, you'll be able to see it. The little, you got an eye, which, just like in Photoshop, you can turn it on and off the layer. And then you got a little circle to the left of it. You click that, you're back into recording mode, so then you can add stuff onto it. The great thing about layers, though, is you got the slider. If I start to slide that back, you can see it actually starts to take it away. Or if I take it to the opposite direction, it starts to do the negative or the opposite. So what I like doing with this kind of stuff is doing big details, big strong details. So let's say I'm doing something like this. Oops, I need a layer. Boom, there you go. So big old layer like that. And then I'll start to feather it back. So I can fine tune it. So I'm going heavy handed with it to then pull it back later on. Because when you come up to this kind of stuff, it's all about slight differences, not any massive details unless you've got scar tissue or anything like that. So if I want to have like very subtle pitting of the skin, say if you've got like lupus or they've just got like acne or something, I can have several different layers. And like I said, you can have multiple layers, and then they are controlled differently. That's layers. Like I said, I like using them, but in my experience, just because I think I might be a little bit too heavy-handed with them, I do sometimes get crashes. It does also add data to your save, so if you've got a load of layers, you might be increasing your file size quite a lot. Once you're done with them, once you think, right, I'm done now, I don't need these layers anymore, and I'm definitely okay, you can literally just say bake all. And what that'll do is it'll bake all the information onto the mesh at whatever slider positions you've got there. Dead easy. And then you can go back and do more layers, or you can go back and do another morph target thing. But those are three ways of adding, controlling detail on a surface. You've got the noise. So if I go through like the stages that I would use them, you've got the surface noise stuff, which lives in the surface menu. So surface, noise, and this allows me to add a general noise over the surface. You can go through and start playing with stuff. There's also plugins that you can. This does need a little bit of work. It doesn't always work. I rarely use it successfully, but you can do stuff to adjust your noise. You can stretch it, all this kind of stuff for whatever you're doing. Wood, skin, metal, anything. So I'd add that, and then I'd also use before I commit to it. So before I apply to mesh, I'd also use a masking brush just to start to airbrush out the places where I don't want the noise to be, and then I'll commit that to the surface, and now it's actually on the surface. From there, I would then go to store a morph target, which is morph target. There you go, morph target. Store empty, store morph target. So I'm taking a picture of how the mesh looks at that point. So what I could do is I could take a morph target before I apply the noise, and then use the morph target brush. So BMG, there you go, BMG to start to push it back. All I'm doing there is I'm just storing a morph target, applying the noise, using the morph brush to pull back that noise where I don't want it. Or if you hold Alt with the morph brush, you can also increase. You almost like the opposite. You're adding more of that information in there, but it can get very weird. So then I'd do the morph target thing, and I'd do, you know, big passes of information, stuff that I knew would get destroyed, and I might have to add it in, or I might have to go back and rejig it later on. So I'd add that and add that. And then I'd do layers, where if I'm doing stuff which is like fine detail stuff like scar tissue, stuff where, I know in my mind things are like props of the face or scars, spots, blemishes, anything like proper 3D. I'd use the layers for that because then I can control it. I can have multiple different layers. And then I might bake all the layers down when I'm done with that one, go back to the morph target, do some more stuff with that. So they're just ways of adding and controlling information. And then we also looked at how we can change brushes to do what we want. And that's really where you need to play around with brushes, because I get something like the standard brush, for instance. Nice standard brush. But I'm going to change it to be color spray, and I'm going to change the alpha to be, where is it? There's like a, there it is, alpha 60. Like that. But then I'm going to bring down the intensity. Like that. So it's almost like a bit of a wrinkle brush. So you can imagine that around the bottom base of the eye. You know, it's not absolutely perfect, but it can do the job quite well. Especially when you learn. I'm not going to start throwing tons of like specialized brushes at people just while we're learning how to do this. But you can see there, all that was just a standard brush. So I'm taking the presets of a very soft brush, because so some of these presets do kind of carry over when you start changing stuff. So I got the soft brush, standard brush, nice and soft, changed it to color spray or spray, and then I changed the alpha to alpha 60, and then that allows me to make this kind of information. You also have inside stroke modifiers. So stroke jitter is, it's just like jitter inside of Photoshop, where in this case it's rotating the brush. So I'm just going to subdivide it once so I can get a clean space. So what jitter does is it rotates the brush. It jitters the brush. So stroke. If I turn that all the way down to 0, all those are in a perfect line like that. If I raise the jitter, it starts to wobble a little bit. And if I completely knock it up to max 1, so again, you know, applications. There's also brush imperfections, which, if we just go mad on this one, kind of makes the brush kind of pixelated like this. You can see how you got this noise on the inside. It's almost like it adds noise to the actual alpha. I've had pretty good success just adding a little bit of that. So then your brushes sometimes become less smooth. You sometimes get a bit of noise to the actual alpha itself. Placement. That's like scatter inside of Photoshop. So if I want to, oh, that's a really good one. If I actually made my skin brush and I turned placement to 1, there we go. So I'm really starting to spread these dots out now. But if I made a placement really small, tightens them up. All this kind of jazz. So the stuff you can have fun with in there, and there'll be certain stuff I'll show you later on, especially when we come to do clothing. It's quite nice, but I'll leave it there for now. So you know, changing your brushes, very very easy. The two main things are, you've got the stroke menu inside stroke at the top there, and you got modifiers. You know, feel free to play with these as well. If you ever break a brush, you can always just go to your brush menu and go down to reset all brushes, and that'll reset the brushes. And then obviously, you know, choosing a brush, choosing the alpha on the stroke type. I've still got brush imperfections on there. Oh, I have a little bit. There we go. There we go. So yeah, choosing a brush as like your base, and then choosing the way that the stroke actually is achieved, then choosing the alpha, and just have a play. Like I said, I don't have many tons of custom brushes, that kind of stuff. I tend to make all of my brushes myself, and that's how I've been able to get levels of detail like this, is just by doing those simple steps, and it's just got a control on it. So in class and in another video, we're going to actually have a look at how wrinkles form. We're going to look at that Daniel Boschung website a lot and really get close up to the face. But for actually making the stuff on the surface, these steps are really, really useful. There's no point going through and trying to place skin pores by hand, because that'll drive you absolutely insane. There are billions of skins of spores on a body, so if you can just use a brush to throw them in. And if we were doing this for film, we'd be doing things differently. But because we're doing this for games, there are places where you can kind of, be a bit wobbly. Unless you're doing some kind of hyper-realistic game, when you're probably dealing with scan data at that point. But if you're doing like a semi-realistic game like Overwatch, Destiny, Dishonored, all that kind of stuff, that's the kind of level of information that you need. No more than that. Because people see that noise on the face and they'll go, okay, skin pores, wrinkles, cool, let's move on and enjoy the game. It's cool. See you in the next one.